Welcome to our presentation From Mindfulness to Music, Creating and Connecting Through Contemplative Music Practice. In our workshop today, we offer you direct experience into developing techniques of mindfulness in order to create contemplative music practices for restoration, wholeness, connection, mental health maintenance, and more. My name is Gerard Yun, coming to you from Waterloo, Ontario, and I'm joined by my colleague Lena Cousins from London, Ontario. Before we dive in, I offer this connection to the land. Home, where so many of us are now required to be. My home is on land once solely inhabited by the First Peoples, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and by peoples known at the time as the Neutrals. The descendants of these peoples are here too, at their homes with us. There are our co-workers, our colleagues, neighbors, students. There are friends and mentors for whom we continue to seek justice and fairness in a world that pulls at the very seams of these values. Anishinaabe author Richard Wagamese writes about the land and home. On my own in the country of my people, I feel the lure and tug of the land as insistently as a lover's grasp. This is where the poems are born, where the stories are nurtured within me, and it's here, among the cliffs and stone, the bush and the waters, where I am most fully the creation that I am. I stand solid here. I am the moose, the bear, and the pickerel. I am the tamarack, the pine, and the lichen. I am the rich brown of the earth and the eternal bowl of the sky. Home, where I'm articulated and defined in the context of geography. Once again, welcome. My name is Gerard Yun from Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, where I serve as assistant professor in community music at Wilfrid Laurier University. I'm also the father of 2 teenage girls. So, I was born and raised in the Sierra Nevada mountains of Northern California, American-born Chinese and Jamaican Chinese on my mother's side. And because we are delving into the realms of spirituality and meditation today, I locate myself as a person raised and educated in the progressive Catholic tradition. But for the past 38 years, which seems amazing to me, I have been a student and practitioner of esoteric traditions, including Zen and Mahayana Buddhism, with much emphasis on the secularized teachings such as mindful self-compassion. I locate my musical practices as a conductor and scholar in the Western classical tradition and practitioner of global forms received through direct cultural transmission. These include bluegrass guitar, West African drumming and the kora, the Native American flute, several forms of Asian throat singing, and most relevant to our work today, the Zen Buddhist Japanese shakuhachi, or the bamboo meditation flute, the practice of which deeply influences our workshop today. Now, 6 years ago, a first-year university student in my music and its context course suggested we start a music meditation club on campus. I'd like to introduce that person, my former student and now my colleague, Lena Cousins. And Lena, would you take a few moments to locate yourself? It's great.
Hi, everyone. As Gerard said, my name is Lena Cousins, and I'm a graduate from the music program at Wilfrid Laurier University. I recently completed my teacher's college, and in the coming years, I hope to teach elementary school music. In terms of locating myself, I was born and raised here in Southern Ontario. My upbringing was non-religious, but I was introduced to meditation by my high school French teacher, and from there, I developed this deep interest in the mindful and spiritual practices of the world, and I would say particularly those which foster compassion and community.
Wow. Thank you, Lena. That's really, really wonderful. Today, we've inherited a world drastically pulled at by the global pandemic and by global racialized unrest, a world that even before the pandemic was rife with epidemics of loneliness, poverty, anxiety, mental illness, and suicide, armed conflicts, forced migrations, refugees, human trafficking, and more, all underscored by a sickening sense of inevitable global environmental mortality. Lena and I feel that our practice of music meditation is no panacea for all of this happening in the world, but we offer it here as an important tool, an adjunct in the many societal tools offered by and through community music. Lena, would you tell the story about the meditation club and how we came around to this practice?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, I was introduced to meditation by one of my high school teachers. And with that teacher, I ran a group for a few years for students like me who were interested in learning more about meditation. When I then moved away to university, I found that even though I took with me what I'd learned in that group, and I had my own meditation practice at that point, I really missed the community aspect. Around that time, I was talking to Gerard after class one day, and we realized that we had this shared interest in meditation as a communal activity, which was really, really exciting to me because up until that point, I thought that meditation was supposed to be a deeply personal solo activity. From there, the club that we run kind of came about organically. We didn't really go in with anything of a plan. And from the beginning, it was just a handful of music students who had come together. So incorporating our music was an obvious choice. But after a certain point, we realized that the practice we had developed was kind of unique. From the outside, it probably just looks like a group of musicians improvising. But the people who've participated over the years report experiencing it very differently than they might have expected, especially those who come to us from the classical music background. For one thing, our practice is intentionally non-performative. We try to leave behind the ego and the expectations that come with classical improvisation. And we focus instead on listening and really deeply listening to be present rather than as a way to formulate our own musical contribution. So what's really interesting to me 6 years now after we've started this club is how the practice and the purpose have shifted over the years to meet the needs of the people who show up in front of us. And I think for me, that's the biggest takeaway that I would encourage you to consider if you want to recreate this practice. Experiment, try new things, but really listen to the people in front of you, listen to what they need and to what they bring to the table. And I think if you do that, you'll end up with really, really beautiful music for one thing, although that's not the intention. But more importantly, it will hold space for a meaningful experience.
That's wonderful, Lena. I'm going to go ahead and give the listeners a bit of a background on how our practice, what the elements of our practice are, so they can sort of get it contextually, socially. Most people now take practices of mindfulness for granted, and it's become a cultural fixture in the alternative medicine scene. And in fact, as of 2 years ago, it was a $1.2 billion industry in North America, which I did not know. I had to look that up. The version of mindfulness that has come to us in Europe and North America, while a combination of various parallel practice from a variety of traditions, often mostly faith traditions, is grounded in an offshoot of Zen Buddhism known as Engaged Buddhism. Now, this set of practices came to us during the Vietnam War when monks and nuns, unable to continue their practices of worldly disattachment or non-attachment, they just couldn't do it anymore. There were too many people suffering around them. They met meditation with social action and with the intent of reducing the suffering of those around them, especially those victimized by the war at the time. The practices of Engaged Buddhism eventually were intentionally secularized, detached from having any one religious faith, tradition, or teachers. And the teacher Thich Nhat Hanh founded his order of interbeing. This is pretty big now. Thich Nhat Hanh's commitment to nonviolent change and practices of community peace, compassion, and dignity resonated with Martin Luther King Jr., and Martin Luther King nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. And since then, human rights and engaged mindfulness, as it's often called now, have been intertwined. To see how it backs up against Black Lives Matters and other current events, I'm going to turn you over to or refer you to the works of activist and teacher, Buddhist and Quaker teacher, Valerie Brown. Just pretty great stuff. We have come to know some of these practices. Most of them are compassion practices through something called Mindfulness for Mental Health, MMH, which was a North American invention. I believe it was John Kabat-Zinn, and he passed it it became adopted by the school systems, and it's absolutely everywhere. It's a restorative system of mindfulness practices. Practices of mindfulness, however, go beyond the restorative mental health and directly overlap with intentions of community music, intercultural communication, dignity, dialogue, peace, social justice, connection, compassion, self-compassion, and ultimately understanding across various groups. And of course, music making as part of that. Now, technically, there are two types of meditation involved in this workshop just before we get started now. One is object meditation, where you can take any object. What happens, most of the time it's the breath that's used as the object. We're going to use sound and music as well in order to create calmness and to settle our body-mind systems down. Once the object meditation does its work, then we sort of put you into insight meditation. Those of you who are trained in meditation will recognize this as vipassana meditation, especially the act of noticing or watching. You get this during body scans and practices of straight thought watching with detachment. So we too will settle into our awareness and literally notice or watch our own voices, the sounds in our bodies, and also the sounds around us in our houses and on the recording. We listen for those without judgment and therefore without the need to act on any judgments. And we do this to allow insight and perhaps wisdom to arise. And so with that, here we go. And I'll put on some music and our faces will disappear. Thank you.
Find a comfortable place to sit, the floor, your chair, anywhere you can sit with your head balanced nicely on your shoulders without any strain. Settle into that comfortable space. You may close your eyes or keep them with a soft focus a few feet away on the floor in front of you. Settle. Soften. Allow the breath to go in and out naturally. Settle.
Listen to the sounds around you, to the hum of the lights in your home, to the sound of air flowing. Allow yourself to hear without judgment. You may say things to yourself in your mind such as, "That's a hum," or "That's a car engine." Settle further into listening. "That's the sound of air flowing in and out of me." Listen. "Is that my heartbeat?" Listen. "Is that my blood flowing?" Listen further into the music as the shruti box drone and the tanpurna begin to hold our space. Listen. Notice when a thought, a sound, a distraction carries your mind away from just listening and noting. Notice what arises. Allow yourself again to return to listening gently, without judgment, without harshness. Almost as if you were doing this for your best friend. Return to that sound. This act of returning is at the heart of this practice, guiding awareness from distraction to mindfulness with self-kindness, without judgment, with easy precision and great skill. Connect now. If you're feeling safe and willing to take a risk, go ahead and join the instruments and the sounds now playing. Join with your voice. Join with an instrument in your home, your sound to their sounds. Without judgment, notice what stops you, where there is some resistance. Without judgment, simply notice and release it. Just notice your judgmental. You may connect with voice, instrument, or with deep listening, and allow your presence to connect.
awaken. Gently awake and return to our so-called normal state.
So that is a very short taste of music meditation simulated for this online presentation. Normally this would just spontaneously, organically grow. And in this case, we had to use some pre-recorded work. We'd like you to try it again with 2 additional teachings in mind. Deep listening via composer and founder of the Deep Listening Institute, Pauline Oliveros, and deep play via naturalist Diane Ackerman. Deep listening, as developed by Pauline Oliveros, explores the difference between the involuntary nature of hearing and the voluntary selective nature of listening. The practice includes bodywork, sonic meditations, and interactive performance, as well as listening to the sounds of daily life, nature, your own thoughts, body, imagination, and dreams. It cultivates a heightened awareness of the sonic environment, both external and internal, and promotes experimentation, improvisation, collaboration, playfulness, and other creative skills vital to personal and community growth. Deep play comes to us from naturalist Diane Ackerman. Deep play, she says, is more intensified of play, a form of play that puts us in rapturous moods and awakens the most creative, sentient, and joyful aspects of our inner selves. She says, in rare moments of deep play, we can lay aside our sense of self, shed time's continuum, ignore pain, and sit quietly in the absolute present, watching the world's ordinary miracles unfold. One is complete, open to whatever may come. Diane Ackerman.
Allow yourself to settle once again into a relaxed, balanced posture. Comfortable, easy, but alert. This time, breathe your way down, following first your breaths and then the sounds as you listen for everything you can. Deep listening is listening more than with just the ears. Notice and allow, and eventually again connect with the sounds, bringing awareness, voice, instrument, attention. Notice. Now begin to play. There is no judgment here, no grades, no vocal expectations. Play. Find a duet, a melody, a harmony, and explore. At this time, we invite you to bring your awareness gently back. Notice your breath and feel settled as we conclude this workshop.
Thank you for attending our workshop today. We are curious about your experiences, and we invite your creative ideas to move this work and this practice forward. There are some resources, online resources and such, and I'm including those in a file that I'm putting on the Zoom chat line. So those will be available to you. Thank you, and Lena and I think will now be ready for question and answer and comments.